Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today we have Brian and Drew and Lou and Oscar. Good to have you guys today. One resource I want to mention this week, you can find at buddyc.org, is a nightly 9 p.m. Eastern open online meeting of AA that was started at the first of the pandemic. Still going, meets every night. You can get there by going to zoomaameetings.com. Well, actually affords to the actual Zoom link itself. So you can get there. You do have to be logged into your free Zoom account for authentication. So we do not have a password. That's how they do it. Every night, 9 p.m. Eastern, check it out if you're so inclined. And actually, I host or co-host on Sunday nights. So if you're there on a Sunday, please say hello. All right. The True Man is the story we'll be talking about today from Thomas Merton's interpretation of Chuang Tzu's writings. Now, if you're new to the podcast, these are probably stories that you have not heard if you're not a student of the Tao or looking at God from this frame, I guess may be a way to say it. You can go back. I'd suggest going back in the episodes that we have. The 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching, we've gone through 2 or 3 times during the course, probably twice all the way through at least. You can go back in the prior episodes. I would suggest listening to those first. If you're new to this, go back to verse 1 of the Tao Te Ching and start there. That would be my suggestion, and draw forward. If you want a little more foundation of Taoist thought, I would suggest that to get you started. And any books that we talk about, more or less, I have in the resources section. I have a bookstore on buddyc.org. Just got a direct link to Amazon with all that information. All right, the True Man. Drew, you going to read for us, sir?
Sure.
Thank you.
What is meant by a true man? The true men of old were not afraid when they stood alone in their views. No great exploits, no plans. If they failed, no sorrow. No self-congratulation and success. They scaled cliffs, never dizzy, plunged in water, never wet, walked through fire and were not burnt. Thus their knowledge reached all the way to Tao. The true men of old slept without dreams, woke without worries. Their food was plain, they breathed deep. True men breathe from their heels. Others breathe with their gullets, half strangled. In dispute, they heave up arguments like vomit. Where the fountains of passion lie deep, the heavenly springs are soon dry. The true men of old knew no lust for life, no dread of death. Their entrance was without gladness, their exit yonder without resistance. Easy come, easy go. They did not forget where from, nor ask where to, nor drive grimly forward, fighting their way through life. They took life as it came gladly, took death as it came without care, and went away yonder, yonder. They had no mind to fight Tao. They did not try, by their own contriving, to help Tao along. These are the ones we call true men. Minds free, thoughts gone, brows clear, faces serene. Were they cool? Only cool as autumn. Were they hot? No hotter than spring. All that came out of them came quiet, like the 4 seasons.
Thank you, Drew. As our custom is, we'll go back to the first paragraph and read through and hopefully hear what this story is saying. So we're talking about the true man. So this is all appears to be a description of what the true man is. And we know that just from what we've read and discussed before, the true man would be the man following the Tao. Or if we want to put this in recovery or AA terms, the man that's spiritually fit probably would be a way to say that. You ladies, it's the same as the person. I'm not talking about no distinction there. Yeah, spiritually fit. It's kind of like I was reading the 15th verse earlier of the Tao Te Ching. The first little paragraph says, this is Stephen Mitchell's translation. The ancient masters were profound and subtle. Their wisdom was unfathomable. There is no way to describe it. All we can describe is their appearance. That's what I think this is doing. It's just describing their appearance. It's like we've talked about before, trying to describe how a strawberry tastes. You can't, words are inadequate. You just have to taste one. Same deal with this, I think. Words are never, anytime you're talking about your perception of the higher power, ever what that is, words are inadequate, always. And what you normally end up talking about is the fruit of your relationship with the higher power, with spirituality. That's why everyone is different. I don't know anyone in recovery that has exactly the same higher power that I do. Get closer to it with religion because you're told what to believe there a lot of times. Come about it in a different way. When I was growing up and when I attended church regularly and was involved, I was told what we believe. I think that's called the creed. You'll have it on the wall a lot of times. This is what we believe. But we're not told that. In AA, there's no, this is what we believe. I thought that was what the steps were originally, was something of that nature. But what I realized was I'm never told what to believe when I came into AA. That's not part of AA, but the one thing that is, I hear that you've got to have a belief in God. I'm not so sure of that, but what I am sure of is that you're going to have to surrender your life and give up the control. Turn your will and your life over to the care of something. And for most of us, that's some type of higher power, but could be just by practicing compassion. If God is love, that is the higher power. So if I practice compassion instead of succumbing to my fear and I choose love over fear, that's what I'm doing. So for me, belief's irrelevant, but surrender's not. You have to surrender. You must, or I must. I don't know anyone that has been able to bypass surrender in recovery and have any kind of success, because basically that's letting go. So this is a description of the person who learns to turn their will and their life over, to let those things go that I used to try to carry and was unable to do so, no matter how hard I tried. So this is what they look like. This is a description. You guys have anything, just raise your virtual hand or interrupt me, please. So the true men of old, it's interesting. This was written, what, 2,200 to 2,500 years ago? And they're talking about the men of old at that time. So this spirituality we're talking about, it's been around, I would think, forever. But what they're describing is not something new, something that was ancient at that time.
And that kind of reminds me that of the problems that we face that we think are new to us have really been around forever. It may be the way it manifests may be different because of technology or the transportation or industrialization or something. the root of so many of our problems has been around for way longer than we think that they have.
That's because, I think, Drew, because all of our problems, our perceived problems, all are from the same source, is within. Notice the first thing they say about the true man, very first thing, that they're not afraid. Oscar?
Yeah, thank you. The problem is us, right? And we were here all the time. And during all those years, we just kept building the ego instead of breaking it down. And here it says, true man is a man without ego. So what is left then when there is no ego? There's how it is described. It's a kind of emptiness. And the other word that came to my mind was anonymous. He is anonymous. And he can do a lot of crazy things, like walking through water and not getting wet, walking through fire, not getting burned. So this man or woman is not a body. It's definitely not a body, and it's not an ego. So what is left of us if we let go of our ego and of our identification as a body? And then somewhere there must be the entrance for a true man. That's how I read it. Thanks.
Thanks, Oscar. So first we know they were not afraid. They were not afraid when they stood alone in their views, but I would say they just were not afraid, period. I would think. Because all of these things that hinder me from being a true man are all manifestations of my fear, my ego, all the other. That's a tool of my ego, is a tool of my fear. Ego, in the way we're talking here, is being out of balance. So there's times that if you're following this way of life, that you may stand alone. That doesn't sound good, does it? I want everyone to approve and stand with me. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be the only one that takes a stand and no one takes that stand with me. Drew?
That's what I was thinking of with this line. And they weren't afraid of rejection. They weren't afraid of criticism. They weren't afraid of being cast out. They weren't afraid of being lonely. Then those, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, those are a lot of the fears that drove me to continuing with my addiction. The things that they weren't afraid of when they stood alone in their views. Those fears have not gone away throughout the course of the 2,500 years or so.
Thank you, Drew. Now we start describing some of their actions. They have no great exploits, no plans. I think meaning plans is not that they did not make a plan. It's maybe that they did not have expectations in their plans. No, it's like the difference between great effort and effortless effort. Effortless effort's unselfish, selfless effort is the way that we've come to understand that. And effort.
Yeah, I'm sure they had to have plans for growing their crops.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So yeah, not no plans, but no contrived plans, no selfish plans.
Yeah, exactly. I hear people, they'll get on something like that and they just go off on a tangent. I'm like, how can you even think that would that anyway? Lou.
I think maybe another way to think about it is if you're in the Tao, or if your higher power is compassion and you're always acting towards, that's not a plan, that's more of a way of life. And whether you're growing your food or you're doing whatever, you're going to work, whatever, there are things that come up and you have to take a certain sequence of steps and those kinds of things. But the plan is to do the program, to follow the Tao, to
Be present.
that's the real plan. Yeah. That's the way I think about it.
And you can only follow compassion in the moment anyway. Fear, of course, does the opposite. It takes us in yesterday or tomorrow with regret or worry. So it always drives us out of the moment. And compassion and gratitude can always bring us back. Oscar?
Now, there are a lot of examples in the nature that survive without having plans. And birds go, they fly from, I don't know where in Europe, north of Europe, all the way to the south, but they don't do it with a plan. I also have some pets and cats, and they sleep without plan. They go outside without plan. They just live without a plan.
Are you sure, Oscar?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Okay. My dog has a plan. The way I'm thinking, his plan is when he gets tired, he sleeps. That's the extent of it. I think that's probably more of the plan that we're talking about, is more of we follow by the design that's for us.
Yeah, but that's something, yeah. The design is something else than a plan, I think.
Yeah.
So it's just happening. So he just falls asleep when he's tired, and
Yeah.
and we will too. We have no control over our sleep. We have no control over our breath. We have no control over to be thirsty. We have our instincts. We have our needs, like natural needs. Sometimes we get cold. Sometimes we get hot. And if you get cold, you put something. I think we could come a long way without planning, but we don't dare to because we think we are really important. And we have to keep control over something which is completely impossible to have control over. It's a complete illusion to think I have control about anything. It's my life, my plans. What am I talking about if there's so much billion cells changing all the time and moving all the time, which I call my body? And I think somewhere in this mind of mine, I think I'm in control and I can make a plan for something. It's outrageous, actually, to think I have anything to do with it.
So let me ask you, Oscar, is me having a retirement account? About real life, you know what I'm saying? This is the question I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I plan for retirement. I check and see how I need to shift my investments. Is that a plan, as in a thing, something I shouldn't do? How does that fall in? Because this happens a lot in text like this. You see something and there is some understanding for what that could mean to apply it, but yet it's paradoxical, in other words, like a lot of this stuff is. How would you address, is that a plan like they're talking about here, or is that just part of our daily life as being human, that we have retirements coming up and it would
You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine without plan.
So I shouldn't have a 401k or have
No, it doesn't really matter. You can do whatever is good for you. I think there's no good or bad in this, I think. But I think you're going to be just fine without any plans about future or security, or what do you call it? I don't know the English word, but when my house gets burned, I get a little bit of money.
fire insurance.
Insurance, yeah, that was the word. It's also crazy. It's all fear, right? It's all fear-based plans. So if you let go of the fear, you don't need the plans.
Or if I could, for lack of a better term, plan for retirement without fear, knowing that
Yeah.
that's different than if I'm got all this effort frantically because I'm afraid. That's the difference. That's the difference. Good. Thank you, Oscar, because I wanted to address that because I know that's a question that will be asked. So thank you. Yeah. Can I do these things without fear? If I'm doing them out of fear, then the fear needs to be addressed. Yes. Drew.
Yeah, and I think a second way to look at this question is if you take out your plan, your self-concerned plans, your plans for making people like you, or your plans to get rich quick, plans for manipulating others. If you take out all of those plans, then you can see clear enough to focus on the healthy plans, the growing crops, that sort of thing, the retirement account. Retirement account is beneficial for not just you, because when you get up there in age, if you have a good retirement account, then you won't be a burden to the people around you. You'll have a place to live. You'll have money to live on. Your daughter won't be having to take a second job to help pay for your living expenses, because you'll have those taken care of. So you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for the people around you. And that's a healthy plan. I don't think that just because you're the primary beneficiary doesn't mean that other people don't benefit as well.
But
so no,
also, too, though, I'm not saying that I should do things that are irresponsible, but I seem to always be taken care of regardless.
Mhm.
So there's an aspect of that there too. So I think the point is, can we approach life from a place of selflessness? And if we're presented with, oh, this looks like something I should invest in, why don't I do this? Okay, I'll do it. This keeps popping up. Maybe that's where I need to put some money. Okay. And then it doesn't make money, or it does. Oh, okay, that was good. Okay. Whatever it is, like the farmer, like the Taoist farmer with it. That's much different than having my plans, having something that I'm doing because I'm afraid of whatever to fill in the blank.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Drew. You have more, sir?
Just what you said made me think of wearing a seatbelt. You don't plan to get in an accident, but accidents happen, and you know, wearing the seatbelt isn't just for you. Definitely benefit if you're wearing a seatbelt, but if you get in an accident and you're not wearing a seatbelt, that increases the chances you go to a hospital, which takes away a bed, takes away doctor's time, takes away resources that could be going to somebody else. That's another kind of plan that you could say, if I drive with a seatbelt on or off, I'll be taken care of. Hospitals exist. We can buy insurance. We can save for retirement. We can do things for our safety. We can plan for the future in that way, not only to benefit ourselves, but benefit others.
Thank you, Drew. Brian, I've never had everyone with their hands up. This is great.
But buddy, what I'm hearing is surrendering expectations. I was thinking about this talks about if they failed, no sorrow, no self-congratulations and success. For me, I know I can start looking and saying, if I invest in this, if I buy this Bitcoin, then it's going to continue going up. And I can get in my head about what it's going to turn into, and I'm hearing some guys that are just really indifferent, like the Taoist farmer. It's, hey, I'm going to take that next right indicated step, and maybe this will work, maybe it won't. And I really like what Drew said about the seatbelt. It's pretty good way to put it. Yeah, this is some good stuff for me. I'm glad we all got traction on it. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian. Oscar.
Yeah, it's also, I was thinking, okay, I can talk from my experience. What I try to do in my life is to live God's will and God's plan. So he's the manager. So I remember my step 3 decision every morning. I remember, okay, I'm not the manager. I'm not going to fix it. I'm not going to plan it. I'm not going to do anything. I have nothing to do with it. So I go anonymous or as egoless as possible in them. And then I prolong with a step 11, which says we overthink the plans of our day. And this in this process, I look for God's plan. So I go into prayer or contemplation, and then I write down the things I do during the day that is in front of me. And then I shift out the nasty things, which are selfish or egoistic or dishonest, that I throw away because that won't be God's will. And in this way, I try to live God's will in a plan for a day. But I try to follow God's plan in this. And in God's plan, definitely would be possible to save money for my retirement. And it definitely would be God's plan to put on my seatbelt. There's no discussion about this. Is this my will or my plan? I just think, okay, what is good, loving, as good as possible in this moment, loving, kind to all people or to the moment in front of me and to the people who are there, and without being selfish or dishonest or egoistic. And then I'm somewhere in the process of not planning myself, because if I'm gonna plan, it's gonna go wrong one day. There's gonna be a day that I wake up and I have to plan to go to a liquor store and buy a bottle of whiskey and drink it. It's gonna happen, and then the other voice in my head will say, the first day it will say, no, that's not a good plan, and the second day it will say again, no, it's not a good plan, but the third day it will say, yeah, it's a good plan, and I'm lost. So I need this higher power in the planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Oscar. Lou.
I think it was the famous philosopher Mike Tyson that said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Now.
And that speaks to some of this too that I've heard the other guys mention, and you, buddy, is that just a plan being based in fear, it's also based in the future. It's not a now thing. And I'm learning and agreeing with what others are saying.
Thank you, Lou. I was thinking about this in regards to planning a vacation this summer. Okay, I'm going to drive here. I'm going to take a little driving trip, get to know some people in recovery I've known a long time, but not had the opportunity to meet. So now I'm planning the trip. I'm looking at when I can go. I'm not doing it from a place of fear. I'm just making the plan that's in front of me, and I'm present making the plan. I don't know if that's confusing or not, but I know it's confusing me. But it's not a fear-based plan like we were talking about, what Oscar was talking about. Drew?
Yeah, to relate this plan talk directly to sobriety, I know in the daily sobriety group that I'm in, we get a lot of people who are a day or two or a week or two into it. And a really common thing we hear from them is that they're afraid of having strong cravings. And a common piece of advice is to have a plan for what to do when you feel a really strong craving. who to call, what to do, how to handle it internally, whether it's go for a walk or do some deep breathing meditation, go see a trusted friend, call a sponsor. Having a plan leads a lot of people in sobriety to, just in my experience, to handle those cravings a lot better when they pop up, because they do pop up, cravings and thoughts and urges. Those are generally out of our control, but our responses are what's in our control. And I know from experience, having a plan helps take away that fear, or at least greatly reduce it, because I know that if I have a plan for if I stumble across something in my house, when I'm cleaning out a cabinet or something, I have a plan for what to do if that happens, rather than being afraid of stumbling across something because I don't know how I'll handle it. So that's just what that made me think of.
Thank you, Drew. So we could say, I think, from our conversation, this line, no great exploits, no plans, could be, if it's great because we're adding pride and ego to whatever it is that we're doing. So could it be no pride about what I accomplish or what's accomplished in my life, and no self-indulgent plans or no fearful plans? May be a way to, that's a way for me to get it a little clearer in my head. Good conversation. Thanks, guys. I'm going to go ahead and read the rest of this one so we can move on. If they failed, no sorrow. Of course, I don't know. Maybe one day I'd be able to fail and not be disappointed. I have failed before, and I totaled a motorcycle one time in, was it 10 Speed, Wyoming, I think. It took the deputy over an hour to get to where I was. And when I hit a deer hit me, and I just went frailing. And the first thing I did when I jumped up, it was on a gravel road. And anyway, I was going fairly slow. And so I jumped up and I said, I'm really excited to see how this is going to turn into something good. And lo and behold, that year I had decided I was going to quit cheating on my taxes. We do all this work with all of my expenses, and then I'd sit down with the accountant, do this, do that, let's move this here, let's move that there, blah, blah, blah. And when I went in to do my taxes, I told myself, I'm going to pay what they say I should pay this year. He said, you sure? I said, yep. I said, okay. So I had, instead of a $2,000 tax bill, I think it was a $12,000, $13,000 tax bill. So my taxes were due in a couple of weeks, and I didn't have all of that money handy. I was going to have to put it on a line of credit, portion of it anyway. So I totaled this motorcycle. I got a check for the motorcycle, and I found I had to drive a car home from Cody and to Georgia, Cody, Wyoming, and I found the next car I wanted. I said, I love this car. And that was the next car I bought. And the check covered half of my taxes. And it was the second motorcycle that I'd bought real cheap. And that check covered half of my taxes that I had to pay within a couple of weeks of when I got the check. And so I was able to pay it without putting it on a line of credit. So there was a couple of good things that came out of that. So that may be a way that we approach things sometimes without fear, and might apply here. No self-congratulation and success. They scale cliffs and never dizzy. I would think that dizziness would be from fear. They're not scared while they're doing it, maybe. Plunged into water, never wet. Maybe that, not necessarily talking about that you were able to go swimming and not get wet or fall in water, nothing like that. It would be more of a metaphorical, that the circumstances that should cause this don't don't manifest as they normally would. More about paradoxical truth too. Same with a walk through fire and not burnt. Thus, their knowledge reached all the way to the Tao. And I think that would be more intuitive, not head knowledge. Their intuitive knowing, maybe, would be the way I would say that. Anything else before we move to the next paragraph? All right. The true men of old slept without dreams. For me, that could mean a lot of times we have dreams because we're stressed about something. They didn't have stress because they weren't approaching life from a place of fear. Drew?
Yeah, just real quick, what that made me think of, scaled cliffs, never dizzy, plunged in water, never wet. Like you were saying, it's not that they didn't experience dizziness. It's not that they stayed completely dry in water, but they weren't completely focused on their dizziness. They weren't focused on being wet. They weren't upset about it. They weren't mad about it. They weren't frustrated that was something that happened or that they had to endure. But they scaled the cliffs, they plunged in water, and then they just let it be at that point.
Thank you, Drew. Woke without worries. Sounds like free of fear. Their food was plain. We see this a good bit. Maybe that could be speaking to, I've had friends that every meal they ate was some extravagant thing, as if there was some kind of satisfaction, overt satisfaction to get from their food. I don't think the sage ate just one or two things all the time, something very plain as we would think bland, but they didn't have their satisfaction tied up in what they were eating. They breathed deep. I think that speaks to meditation for me, definitely. And three lines about this. They breathe deep. They breathe from their heels. In other words, we would say they breathe from their lower stomach, deep breaths. Others breathe from their gullets, breathe from their throat, is what he's saying, I think. Half strangled. I feel so much, part of my meditation before I start meditating is a deep breathing exercise. And that really clears out my lungs and gets me ready for the day and really helps to center me for meditation. And talking about the ones that don't breathe deep heave up arguments like vomit. In other words, their breathing affects their thinking, affects their surrender, affects their spiritual fitness. So they can't help themselves but argue and defend, and just those things that we learn are useless for the most part. Drew?
Yeah, real quick, I do have to leave for an event that I'm hosting. So I'd hate for us to try to rush through the rest of this in 10 minutes. Maybe we can save the next page for next episode.
I'm good with that.
Do 2 episodes with this one.
Sure. Y'all good with that?
This is really a good one.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot here.
Okay, guys. We'll take it up from there next week. Appreciate the conversation. You guys have a great week and hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.